Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with the Universe, where we learn, we question, and we grow in awareness. I'm Monica Carlos, and today I'm in conversation with my friend and colleague Galina Singer. Welcome, Galina.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Galina is someone that I've been learning from for a very long time. She is a relationship and intimacy coach. And what I love about Galina's way of teaching is that she mines a lot of her insights and wisdom from her own relationships. So I know that she has really lived this. They're not just abstract concepts that she's read somewhere and then has an opinion on. These are like really lived experiences. And Galina is the author of many, many articles that I have read over the years and have really impacted me, have challenged me. And the subject that we're discussing today has definitely challenged me. And it's a from an article that she recently wrote about sexual intimacy with partners and whether that intimacy is a need or a strategy to get certain needs met. And I have had some discomfort around this. And, Galina and I have talked about it, and I'm still kind of diving into what it means for me in my life. And I see it as a really valuable subject for the broader community, for men and women and their relationship. So, as I said, welcome, Galina, and I'm looking forward to this. And I'm also going to read something from your article, a little short blurb from your article. Is that okay?
Yes, of course. Go ahead. So,
Okay.
I have no idea where we're going, so I'm just diving in with you.
So yeah, I've told Galina nothing. I'm just like, we're having an interview. And she's like, about what? And I'm like, none of your business.
Practically, yeah.
Okay, so partly what Galina wrote in her latest, in a recent article about sex is not a need, but a strategy to get certain needs met. She's written, over the centuries of disempowerment in society, a woman's ability to seduce a man and thus manipulate him into providing some of our survival needs was among the few occasions where women could access power. To hold on to that power, we perpetuated the unhealthy dynamic. This patriarchally conditioned belief that a man needs sex has led to much bad behavior, suffering, manipulation, mistrust, distortion, and conflict in our relationships. And then she went on to say that it gets more complicated when one gender demands or expects a certain something to be provided by their partner, and feeling rejected when they don't receive that. So to capsulate that, at the root of these relating issues is our confusion about sovereignty of our and other people's bodies, our boundaries, and clarity as to which of our needs are our responsibility to fill and which needs we can ask others to help us fill. And so my first question to you, Galina, is can you first of all share your relationship with this subject, how you came to writing this, and why you believe this to be true?
Yeah, I mean, there is so much in even that phrase that you read, because what we're talking about is in the last several centuries, or maybe say 2000 years, that I imagine, since patriarchy kind of became instilled. Maybe that was 5,000 years actually, but it's irrelevant. But what I'm saying is that there's been a kind of a split. We've been living in a split from our body where a lot of our natural urges have been deemed shameful, unhealthy, even, like all that was said about our bodies. And so we've suppressed it. And then our mind became like the supreme master of everything else. We've started mastering, and that's, I guess, the expression of the masculinity and masculine in the patriarchy, in that we started feeling that our mind is above the body. And so we do that in our relationships, we do that in our relationship with nature, et cetera, right? That's where I feel that whole supremacy and the dominance the dominating, the kind of totalitarian regimes kind of stem from that belief ultimately that there is one part of us that is better or more important or more intelligent, or and so basically what started happening is that we lost the wisdom and we lost the understanding of our bodies. We lost the understanding of our nervous system, the way that works. We lost the understanding of our sexual urges and how that works. We lost the understanding even of our appetite and why we eat and what we need the energy for, etc. Like we've lost connection to an essential part of who we are, basically, in this, three-dimensional reality. So when we speak about, basically, it's all been distorted in men have needs like that, and women are here to provide for those needs. That's kind of been the written and unwritten rule. Women have had to succumb to that belief as well, completely discarding our own desires or wants or capacities, and also shaming ourselves out of them. So not only did it come from outside, it also was an internal process of like suppressing all of our needs. So when women have become disempowered, one of the few ways that a woman, during the last several centuries could get any kind of power to get her survival needs met was to belong to a man or be somehow, in great majority anyway, right? There probably were some exceptions, but in great majority, that's how most women were able to survive. And then those who couldn't couple up with someone to protect them and take care of them were called names like, like the old hag and the old woman and like all kinds of words that don't feel very attractive, that most women don't want to be. So that's, for me, is where like the first premise of this. And so today we're just learning. I would like to teach people kind of to come back to owning the sovereignty over our body. And I think what also a lot of people may get confused is that there is this idea that we're all connected, and we are all interconnected. But I think the important distinction is we're connected in spirit. Energetically, we are all connected. But while we live in these bodies, our bodies are separate. And it's super, super important to understand, again, where our sense of self begins and other ends. Or our sense of self ends and the other begins. And so, again, I think it takes a while for each one of us to come to that realization, okay, this is mine and this is yours. Doesn't mean that I don't want to play with you and be there to meet some of your needs, but you don't have the right to need coming, in that role. How does that come out for you?
So I love everything you said there. I have a couple of points I want to touch on, but I also want to go back to, did this evolve in your own life? How did this evolve in your own life where you noticed that you wanted to take back the sovereignty of your body, and where you understood that our body was as important as our mind, as our,
Oh my God, coming back to embodying my body was everything.
Yeah.
And like, even in the way you introduced me, I feel like everything I've learned, everything that I got access to, all the wisdom came from me returning to my body. Because, and even when I do read stuff outside, I'm also so now like my body is such a barometer. Like some stuff that I read resonates, and some stuff that I read, I'm like, no, like that's not the truth. But the reason why I know that is because I'm so connected to my intuition, and I'm so connected to my inner knowing. All of that inner knowing and the intuition, it all lives within me, in my body, so to speak, right? So I think that is why returning into our body not only connects us to our own repository of wisdom, but also connects us to everything else that surrounds us. So I feel like I'm more connected with other human beings. I feel like I'm more connected with nature at large. I'm more connected with animals. And so that enriched my life so much more than when I was still attached to my partner of many years as the single source of my pleasure, joy, happiness, etc. And even, I'm a mother of 3 now grown children. Even that was like a completely different relationship when I viewed them as the source of my happiness or source of my unhappiness, for that matter, because, depending on what was happening in their lives. Now that I feel connected to everything else in life and that life has to offer, there's so many other opportunities to be nourished and to be in pleasure. So that's why for me, again, embodying more and more my body and who I am in that physical sense has just brought everything to me.
I really love that. And I have had a similar experience where I came to the realization one day that it's so forced upon us and has been for a long time that our spiritual beingness, our spiritual path is very important, but our body doesn't really mean anything. We should try to overcome the body and overcome our innate wisdom of, our bodily expression. And I just found that but why would we come here to be in embodiment if we are going to try to escape back to our spiritual home where we're here for this period and we should be really, grounded in this experience? And I know from my own upbringing, I was taught the same thing, that men have needs, women are here to, provide those needs. And in some ways, what I believe about that is that when we are in a partnership, it's nice. We're in a partnership for a reason, and it's nice for us to provide certain needs to each other as we are able, as long as we are still in our sovereign beingness, and as long as we are respected and we provide the respect back. But that old kind of conditioning of, men can't help themselves. They just have these needs. So we're going to have to just, be okay with that, has really done a lot of damage. And I know that in my own relationships, there has been expectation of needing to provide that or having it provided for me. And, a client that I was speaking to not too long ago, said to me, but why should I be with someone if I have to provide everything for myself? If I have to be that sovereign that I don't have to rely on anything from that person. Like, why do I need to? Now I'm doing his laundry, but I have to put up with his crap and I'm not getting anything back. And I'm like, ay. So I could see where this conditioning was coming through. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, the first thing that jumps at me in that discourse is we're going from one extreme to the other, right? It doesn't have to be everything or nothing.
Nothing, that's right.
So that's the first thing. Second thing is that men have needs, and let's introduce the fact that women have needs too. So, exactly. Right? So the whole point of being in a relationship, and what you were just throwing in as, here, it's a lot of transactional behavior. I do this for you, so then you do that for me.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it seems to me that, and also from my work with others, I feel like we've come to a place in our evolution of, in our society and our relationships where something else needs to be happening. Like this transactional nature in our relationships doesn't seem quite enough. Like everybody's after connection and intimacy these days. And what is also curious for the subject that we're discussing is that although people are having more sex than ever, because we're more free, supposedly, the intimacy is not growing with the engaging in sex, which to me means sex is something else. It could also be part of intimacy, but it's not intimacy. There are plenty of women, men, like humans, who come together for sex, for that kind of more bodily pleasure.
Right.
But there is still missing the connection and the sense of intimacy. And I know also lots of people, in myself including, who after sex felt more empty than ever. So here there is a communion of two bodies, but if the soul is not present, right? If the willingness and desire, true desire is not present, it's not going to be the same experience. So one of the things that I'm teaching men, for example, is that it's okay for you to have desire, like to the point of being rejected by their long-term partner, for example. How can we create a situation where your desire coincides with my willingness to be in that, engagement with you? How can we be not live from like sexual act to sexual act, but how can we always be in the communion, whether spiritual or intellectual, so that when we, when there is that kind of spontaneous synchronistic moment comes that we both feel that that's what we want to go, then that's just a beautiful expression of our union. However, what is happening more and more is, again, from that, like the man has needs and women succumbing to fill the needs, because also there is another thing, distorted phrase where, well, like if you can't meet his needs, then somebody else will be happy to on the side, right? So then we're talking about security, again, security, disempowerment, fear of survival, all the ancient things that we've had to deal with. So for me, a lot of women have had sexual relationships with their committed partner by fawning, without checking. It wasn't a conscious choice. So a lifetime or decades of fawning and opening up your body and having it be penetrated when you didn't want feels like violence to an animal body. That is why I work with so many women who in their 50s are just cutting all physical relationships with their husbands, because they just like they're fed up, and that's their way to proclaim their sovereignty, and that they're separate, and that they have their own needs, and that they have their own, so again, where we want to get to is where we can live, coexist together in joy and harmony. But to get there, so much of old relating and conditioning and all these old mothers, old woman stories, as they call them, need to be dismantled.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I really resonate with what you said about how can your desire coincide with my willingness? That is a conversation that I feel like every couple needs to have. I feel like you could write about 10 articles out of what you just said in the last 2 minutes, especially about the fawning. Because I had written in my notes before we got on here about how can our sexual pleasure be relational instead of transactional, where, when we get married, people just assume, well, now it's just sex for life. Like this person is going to provide me with, all my needs. For me personally, sex is a love language. And in partnerships that I was in previously to the one I'm in now, I never felt like I felt mismatched a lot of the time. I felt like, okay, this is my love language, but this person doesn't want to really receive my love language.
Or learn your language, right?
Yeah. And then I felt like, well, I'm gonna have to provide this for myself, like love myself in this way that my partner or lover can't. And then later, as I went through menopause and my hormonal shifts dictated that I was a little bit less sexual than I had been before. And my partner went through his own shifts, like through andropause, and he was like, okay, now we're on a different way of being together. Boy, that took a lot of, whew. I did take it personally, as you did ask me in the email exchange we had. I took it personally. I felt like my love language was being rejected. I felt like I started counting up the years. I'm like, okay, so I'm 55, and does this mean I'm not going to have the sex that I want until the day that I die? You know, I brought in so much baggage
Mhm.
into that conversation, and it took us nowhere. Like it just put kind of like a plug into the flow, and we couldn't get anywhere past that until I started to let go. And I'm still doing that. Like I'm still letting go of um, what does this mean? You know, what does this mean in my life? Can I be okay with this? Can
Mhm.
I be satisfied with my own sexual partnership with myself? Or am I going to have that little bit of resentment when I look at him and say, why aren't you providing this for me? So it's been a huge learning. And I wanted to go back to something you said about the old hag. I think that the most dangerous woman is the old wise woman. One, because she has a lot of wisdom of her own. Two, she's usually not attached to a man. And within patriarchy, a woman who is unattached to a man and has her own wisdom is very dangerous because she's going to have her own ideas. She's going to try to shift consciousness. She's going to expose what the patriarchy is. And now, as an older person myself, I'm turning 64 in a week. Um, I feel like, wow, I am that old, dangerous woman. And it kind of feels good.
And even your face changed as you said that, like
Yeah,
sneakiness came in and a kind of
yeah,
playfulness. Do you know what I mean? So do you see
yeah.
how here we are talking about the old hag, which under patriarchy has such a horrible connotation and even sounds ugly. Like if I were
Hmm.
to draw an image, it would probably have like a crooked
Yeah,
nose and maybe a wart somewhere or like crazy hair.
yeah. Baba Yaga.
Baba Yaga, for example. But when you spoke about the fact, the attributes, right, of like the old hag or say the crone, the older woman, it's freedom.
Hmm.
Why was the old hag so dangerous to patriarchy? She was free ultimately because she
Exactly.
didn't have the children, where even hormonally, biologically, we're tied because now we're at least for 18 years, nurturing these
Yeah.
little ducklings of ours that we adore, and so much energy goes on that. A woman who's free from that can do all kinds of craziness. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And she can wreak havoc, yeah. But yet when we speak about it, both you and I became very animated.
Hmm.
Do you know, like again, watching the body language that never lies, do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? So we became very animated because there's something so delicious and
Hmm.
so empowering
Hmm.
in the fact, like in even imagining that we would be free from all those people that we adore who depend on us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because then we're relating to life in a completely different way. But there was something that I wanted to kind of go back to in what you said and your own personal experience that you share so vulnerably. There is something, again, me being 58, it just turned a few months ago. I'm 58 now. So also on that path of like changing, my body is changing, the way I feel is changing, the way I'm engaging with my partner is changing, the way I'm doing everything in life is changing. Mostly, again, my relationship with my body, the way I used to relating to it, the way in the past when I liked the way it looked and the way I kind of it's changing. So my philosophy is very interesting to talk about change in general and why do we resist it,
Hmm.
right? Because even like let's say with our body, what is it? And I watch a lot of women who talk about like don't let menopause, like you don't need to get a belly, you don't need to slow down. It's like, well, ladies,
We
maybe
do.
it has a certain wisdom. Maybe
Yeah.
we do need to slow down. Maybe we do need to learn how to be with our bodies that are not this like perfect centerfold in a Playboy, in a man's magazine. Can we appreciate the change? And also just to stay on the subject and to speak to what's happening between you, your partner, me and my partner, and all of us women and men who are dealing with change. physiological, biochemical. Can we be okay with change? And yes, there is a certain degree of regret, and there is a certain degree of grieving of what was, because some things we lose, we loved having that. So yeah, it is maybe experienced as a loss, but in a way, how can we still move on and appreciate that next stage? And because I think once we allow it, what I'm finding is whatever felt like a loss is now being transformed in gain somewhere else. That's just, from my experience. And then again, like you say, let's look at our grieving. What are we grieving? Like, for example, in your case, being desired, all of us, we all want to be desired, of course, but why? What is it that attention and like attention and desire from outside, where does it bring us? And you know what? It brings us to a place when we were still very disempowered, when we were helpless, when it's more like an inner child who couldn't survive without the attention. Attention from your caregiver was life-giving. So where are we still attached to the need for attention, for livelihood, for nurturance to come from outside? And I don't have all the answers, right? I just have more questions if you.
Yeah, well, that's good. Like, more questions is good. But I do see what you're saying about how those needs, it's a very old and ancient impulse, and we are equating it with certain behaviors, like how much sex or, sexual pleasure our partner is providing for us. And also those expectations of that nothing, okay, we make those promises when we get together, and then we expect those same things to last a lifetime, which in a long-term relationship, if you've been in one, you know that things are going to change on a regular basis, and you're going to have to move through the changes and find your peace with it and find, like you say, yes, you're going to grieve, and yes, you're going to explore that, and maybe it's not going to feel good for a while, but then you end up coming back to yourself if you allow yourself to come back to yourself and to your own embodiment, your own sovereignty. But it's such a deep and it's a subject that is fraught with many landmines, because we just do not want our partner to shift in a way that is going to affect how we feel.
Right. And then my question to you is, yes, it's natural that we experience feelings when somebody doesn't behave according to our desire. But life is full of that. Look at our election, right? Just to bring that as a current event into our life. Where in our relationship, whether with election results, with our partners, do we get upset and temper tantrumy when we don't get what we want?
Right.
And who even told us that we should always get what we want? Do you know what I mean? I think that for me, ultimately, as you know from my writing and my work, ultimately the primary relationship we have is with ourselves. So whatever is happening on the outside with anyone else is just information back to us about ourselves, right? So whatever we experience as rejection or as upsetness or as fear of survival, to me, it's like, well, let's look back in what's going on here. What stories am I still attached to that are causing me pain right now? And can I release them, or even at least investigate them, things like that. Because otherwise we are very, again, that transactional relationship with others, that's ultimately dehumanizing, right? Because we're using this other person as an object to fill our needs. And it all starts with us objectifying ourselves. And then, it spills everywhere. And then we get upset, we get the sense of rejection, then we get upset, then we retaliate, then that's when the war starts,
Yeah.
So on all levels. So to me, again, I just bring everything back to where am I coming from here? What am I experiencing? Because the tendency is to focus on what he or she is not doing right.
Mhm.
Right? Like,
That's
and
how it seems like every relationship, I mean, every argument evolves in that way. Like we're focusing on what the other
yeah,
person
you
is
are
not doing
wrong.
right.
So
Yeah.
then it's so delicious. I mean, it feels good to say you are wrong. Like if we're arguing, if you are
Yeah.
wrong, I'm off the hook, right?
Yeah.
I'm inviting everyone to, well, let's take the gaze off of outside for a minute and let's bring what
Mhm.
hurts, what hurts and why. And this is where, again, the embodiment, that's how we mine the wisdom that is ours, that is collective. Not only are we mining the wisdom of our individual body, we're mining the wisdom of everything that's come before us.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
like, that's rich, you know?
It is absolutely. And it's one thing to intellectualize and philosophize the idea that we are the most important relationship in our life, but it's another thing to experience it and
Mhm.
to live it.
Yeah.
And that does take some painful turns. Um, it's going to expect us to grow in our awareness of ourselves and in, you know, in society in general, and also what has been taught to us, what we need to unlearn. And I really feel like your subject matter here about sex not being a need but a strategy um, can really open up that conversation for couples and for us as a society as well, so that we can relate better and we can end this whole everything is transactional.
Sure. And I can even extrapolate it to every aspect of our lives. What
Mm-hmm.
does money symbolize? What does, a big house with a big gate symbolize? We think
Mm-hmm.
it's security, but it's just a strategy to get that feeling of security. And none of that is guaranteed either. A house
Can
can
I
be
tell you?
destroyed by a flood. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Can I tell you a little story about what happened with my symbolically with security for me? So you
Mm.
and I had this conversation last week or not too long ago about this subject, and I had so much resistance. Like I had, obviously I'm a person who doesn't expect my, like I've grown a lot in not expecting my partner to be, um, we're not really in a transactional relationship as much as, or as codependent as we used to be. But anyway, I do, for my own childhood trauma, blah, blah, blah. I have my own issues with security. And so we live in this really small house, 700 square foot house, but we have this really big gate at the front, which is funny because, and I love that gate. I'm like, look at my big gate, and it's
Yeah.
pretty and it looks nice in the way that it presents our property. So we had recently just fixed up that gate and I painted it and we put it back on its hinges and everything. And I was so proud of it. And I felt secure, like I felt like at night I would close the gate and I would look at it and I would say, look at how secure I am. Then we had another gate on the side of our property. And a month after we put up that big gate, somebody stole our other gate. They just lifted it off the hinges and took it away.
Amazing. But what
And
an amazing story for our
I know. And
conversation.
I felt so violated, like obviously because somebody stole something from me and my daughter reminded me, like, look at, they were just stealing something. It wasn't personal. They weren't stealing it from you. But I did look into the symbolism of how this affected my feelings of security. And we were in that conversation about sex being a strategy at the same time. And so it was a really big lesson for me. It really made me think about, okay, am I really walking the talk? Like, am I really living the things that I say that I believe in? And where are the pieces that I still need to explore? And where can I love myself more to have compassion for myself? Because I felt so shitty about that gate being stolen and et cetera, et cetera. Like, how can I love myself more? And it brought me back to my body and back to relationship with myself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, wherever you go, there you
There you are.
you're just gonna end up back here.
Yeah.
So what I want to say, just because it's so beautiful, I think, you know what, and there is nothing wrong with our desires. It's okay to want sex. It's okay to want a gate. It's okay to want all that we want with a clear understanding that it's just a strategy. So for you closing a big gate, it was like a ritual, right? You were arriving at your security that was happening within through
Yeah.
that gesture.
That's right.
Right?
That's
That's
right.
all it is.
Yeah.
It's not giving you security. It's helping you connect to security within.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
all.
Well, thank you so much. Galina, I so much love the way you explain things. You always have the most wisest way of articulating something. And I just love talking to you and reading all your articles. So if you are looking to, where can people get in touch with you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. Well, my website, galinasinger.com, Instagram, Galina Singer. Yeah, that's where I'm most active.
Okay.
And also I love when people subscribe to my newsletters. I write weekly and often get quite a lot of response from my readers, how incredibly timely somehow manages to be for what they're going through. So yeah, please find me in any of those ways. It'll be my pleasure.
Well, I'm going to link. Oh, and I just discovered you on YouTube. I didn't even know you were on there.
Oh yeah,
So
that's
I
true.
just subscribed.
Thank you.
So I'm going to list this in my Substack podcast, but it's also going to go on YouTube so more people can find you in those ways as well. And I'll link all your links somewhere below.
Thank you. I will be happy to post this on my channels as well.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much, Galina, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Monica.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Oh, hang on, let me end the recording.